Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're taking a look at a Reanimate Shadow deck. This is one I have looked at in the past. Again, we are covering a lot of decks that we have covered in the past. Most of the time these have been covered a while ago, so it's nice to come and check them out in the current meta state and see how they go. Just because there's not much variation in decks right now, we're kind of at a point where nothing new is going to be coming in until the new sets are in place, so why not just check out how these decks are performing now. And this one was a Reanimate Shadow deck that I actually quite enjoyed. It's not as random as previous Reanimate Shadows because you aren't relying on the Atomy package, so you can purely focus on the Zeus package and even have an Underworld Coward package just to kind of bolster your board and put up some wards, which in the current meta still performs quite well. Of course, you do also have one Underworld Ruler Aisha, which works really nicely if you need it. I haven't had a situation yet where I've needed this card, but it's always nice to have that as a backup plan if you do get dragged into a later game where you're using your Zeus and Kawi as more of a stall tactic and using Aisha as a finisher, so it's definitely got some support there. Of course, the core of the deck being the Gloomy, Everdark, Zeus, and then just the Reanimate cards, which are fairly obvious if you are looking for some interesting combos. Sidwin and So Death Reap Life work really well together, so if you have played a Sidwin, get a Zeus, there's one turn, turn 6, So Death, bring back Sidwin, get another Zeus. Pretty great when you're using your Evos, so I do like those sort of combos, and we'll get right into this video and check it out. Our first game is a Shadow versus Shadow matchup. I believe this is a similar mirror match. I mean, it's a Reanimate versus Reanimate deck. Reanimate? Interesting. Anyway, Reanimate deck definitely keeps me on my toes when I come up in these matchups because you do have to plan a little bit with your Zeus just to make sure that your opponent can't absolutely decimate you, and having a perfect hand definitely helps, but unfortunately we've only got a pretty average hand. We are missing our big combo piece, which is going to be that Reanimate summon, so at the moment all I can really do is go for the Gloomy and try to at least force out the Zeus early and dig through my deck. Of course, we do have the Lurching Soul Conversion combination, which should work out pretty nicely. And they also have a pretty perfect play, but they did get it off the Everdark, which means their odds of drawing their Reanimate is fairly decent. But we can at least start dealing a little bit of damage. And there is their Everdark Strix again, really pushing it, this time going hopefully for whatever they can get. Of course, we still don't have what we need either, so we're really just digging through our deck now. Everdark was a better option, trying to look for that Sidwin so we could take advantage of it. And there is their first, so at least now we've seen one Sidwin. There's going to be a Zeus summon, so there's going to be 5 damage to the face. And then we need to be able to deal with that nicely. I'm looking at the best options being a Little Soul Squasher and Lurching Corpse to remove these followers. That is a guaranteed clear, and now that we have a Sidwin, we actually have priority next turn, so that's going to be quite good. Because unless they play another Sidwin, then I think we should be fine. It's a very tricky situation. You don't want to waste your Sidwin to deal with theirs, and vice versa. You don't want them to be able to do that either. There is the Eternity Hunter, so it looks like they're going for another Reanimate. Luckily, that's not even going to matter to us, as we do push as quickly as possible for our own Zeus. So there's our damage right there. We've got another 5 to face. And there is their Eternal Potion. This is why you want your Zeus being the one on board and not theirs, because then they are forced to waste their Zeuses to trade instead of the other way around. And of course, now you get to see the So Death Reap Life combo to go for a nice Sidwin with the Evo for a Zeus. Definitely requires a little more resources, but it works nicely when it's on turn 6 or 7, especially when you can follow up immediately with a Death Dragon Caller, so it does lead us to the concede, which is great, but obviously that works out pretty well. Also, for any of you guys who didn't notice, we are playing Unlimited, of course. That's where these Reanimate decks really shine, even decks like this one. Our next matchup, of course, is against Haven. And we start off with a pretty okay hand, definitely not the best. I do decide to keep the Sidwin just so I can use it. And we also got the Gloomy, so we're only one card short of having our combo. Is that a good thing? Well, we're about to find out. So they start off with a nice globe of stairways, most likely a Tenko variant. They've become very popular. I mean, I was covering Tenko before they took off with the new mini expansion, and it was still quite a strong deck in Unlimited then. Now it's just kind of taken off everywhere. Then we have Gemstone Carapace from them, so pretty standard plays, just kind of the 1-2 punch of Haven. And we quite comfortably go for the attack. We are still missing a way to really work this. So the soul conversion is nice. And we just go for that little bit more damage. The Black Inscription play really letting me down there. I wish that I could have at least had that go off. And the Bejeweled Turtle, or Tortoise, or whatever you want to call it. Really bulky now. Of course, we do get our Sudwin to go off, which is going to give us a pretty nice summon. Being able to reanimate something like Zeus is always great. I'm actually looking forward to messing around with Reanimate in the next expansion. It is shaping up to be at least an interesting deck, both in Unlimited and Rotation. So we get that nice Zeus, which worked out well. They are going for the Summit Temple play. That does end up leaving my Zeus up. So this is the turn that I kind of regret in this match. I do use this Evo on this Zeus here, which does put them at 3 health, which at the time I thought was an okay play. Looking back on it, I definitely should have held the Evo so I could try and take advantage of something else later on, whether it is another Sudwin, whether it's So Deathray Blythe, anything that I could have used really early. Because unfortunately, odds were not in my favour. So I did end up losing pretty much everything here. Which means getting that last 3 damage on this Haven player is a tricky one. And it looks like they are actually running a Summit, which of course you don't see quite as often as you do Tenko now. So I go for the Ceres Soul just because I'm looking for a Death Dragon Caller for next turn, because I felt like that was going to be the best way for me to try and win this game. We don't get lucky though, we don't get what we need. We do end up with a Zeus for turn 10, but we can also use So Deathray Blythe for that. So at this point, really we're just playing the Cowie so we can try to So Deathray Blythe it if we need it next turn, kind of just to buy us that extra time. We are going to get at least a little bit of health though, so that does protect us slightly. And they're still only at 3 health, so really all we needed was kind of anything to reanimate. Unfortunately, Sudwin without an Evo isn't going to get us that reanimate. So even though it's not a reanimate effect, it's basically the same thing. Fortunately, that is a Heavenly Aegis. If it was a Knight, we would have been dead. Luckily, Heavenly Aegis just isn't going to be enough for them to win this game. Actually, I think even a Knight we would have just survived, because that is only a 3-1 at that point. But it probably would have just went face, so yeah. Zeus, getting dropped on 10, closes the game for us quite nicely. Could have ended it the turn earlier if we had saved our Evo, but all's good. So all in all, this was a very fun deck to play. I always love playing this Reanimate deck. It does fairly well, and it's consistently fun at least. So being able to always bring out heaps of Zeus's always lightens up my day, and I prefer to do stuff like that in Unlimited, where it is always a crazy game anyway. There are plenty of decks that do beat this thing down, of course. You don't want to come up against things like a D-Shift unless you have just an amazing hand, and there are plenty of other decks that can really hit this kind of hard, especially the Atomy Reanimate. If they high roll higher than you can, they can do some real damage. So if you did enjoy this video, hit that like button and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.